You young punks! I remember Bull Johnson. Rough, tough Canadian star. He could beat up anybody. And he took on the best. I saw him wrestle a world champion once. Man Masker is the man of 1,000 men. Ow, I pulled something again. Our guest once again, Eric Johnston, classy Canadian comedian, the Outdated Wrestling Hour. Anybody got an ice pack? Hello, everybody. Once again, my name is Bob Smith, and welcome back to the Outdated Wrestling Hour. We are so glad to have you here. And we're going to have a lot of fun on this one once again, because guess who's back? Eric Johnston, classy Canadian comedian, as he said. We're going to have a lot of fun. He's got a lot of things going on. You're going to find out about all of them. We're going to try to get a few laughs in there. As you know, my name is Bob Smith. I used to work with Pro Wrestling Illustrated and Sports Review Wrestling, which once was the home of those exciting Poppin' House wrestling pictorials. Woof. I'm trying to be funny because Eric Johnston is one of the funniest people in Canada. He had a really great 2024, and now he's got some big news for all of us. So while you prep yourself with a Labatt's, is it Labatt's? I'll just say Molson. And whatever beverage you want to quaff, we're going to have our usual announcement here from the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. It's got more podcasts than you can shake a ring bell at. I mean, woof. Well, I reckon it's time to do a little bit of an update for the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Let's see what shows you can enjoy several times every week. They've got a veritable cornucopia of wrestling podcasts, so let's dig into it. Pretty much the flagship of WrestleCopia is the Wrestling Memory Grenade. Join host Ray Russell as he analyzes and discusses years of wrestling history from your favorite promotions. From Hulkamania to Mulkymania, from the Midnight Express to the Lex Express, they've got it all. Tune in and get a big piece of history on the Wrestling Memory Grenade. If you like nostalgia, this one's for you. The Wrestling Stoop with Bob Roop. What a legend Bob Roop is, and he welcomes you to the Wrestling Stoop as he shares stories, historical moments, and all kinds of memories from his 20-plus year career as a wrestler and booker. And you know he got wild near the end of his career. Find out all of it on the Wrestling Stoop with Bob Roop. One of the most unique wrestling podcasts anywhere is DG's Puro Wrestling Academy. Join host Dan as he travels back in time to discuss the history of pro wrestling in Japan. He's spent decades studying the world of Japanese pro wrestling. Now he offers up his historian-level knowledge to you. You'll learn something on every single show, I guarantee it. That's DG's Puro Wrestling Academy. The great Gene Jackson hosts the Retro Wrestling Review. That's RE-View. Brings in a variety of co-hosts and wrestling legends to the program as he goes back in time to watch and review pro wrestling from years ago by. Get the breakdown here at never-before-heard stories, and feel free to watch along with them. It's worth it, let me tell you, especially if you're a USWA fan. Enjoy the Retro Wrestling Review. When this show started not all that long ago, it was called Dangerous Conversations with Doug Gilbert. Now, it's Dangerous Conversations with Doug Gilbert and Tommy Rich, two of the great stars from Memphis and beyond. You'll learn all about them. Hear great old school stories, stuff you've never heard before, definitely on Dangerous Conversations with Doug Gilbert and Tommy Rich. One of my personal favorite podcasts out there is Wrestling Nostalgia with Dave Dynasty, a meat and potatoes name for a anything but a meat and potatoes show. Join him as he reminisces about pro wrestling history with a variety of legendary guests and topics. And what I like about him, he knows everything about Dick the Bruiser, Bruiser Bedlam, and the WWA. But that's only part of what you'll hear on Wrestling Nostalgia with Dave Dynasty. It was the WWF versus WCW, Raw versus Nitro, the Monday Night War, the Ratings War, the NWO, the Attitude Era. Now, there's a podcast all about it. It's called Monday Warfare, Raw versus Nitro. They break it down with episode reviews, you name it. If you want to know all about that classic ratings war, listen to Monday Warfare, Raw versus Nitro. One of the most unique podcasts you'll hear anywhere is the Other Ship podcast. It's a pop culture contest with a pro wrestling lean. Join a rotating group of co-hosts as they talk movies, sports, music, TV, food, and of course, pro wrestling. They take on various topics in roundtable discussions, special guest interviews, and other content concepts. As they say, laugh your ass off on this voyage aboard the Other Ship. New episodes are in the bag for the Captain's Corner pod. Join Captain Nick as he presents the Captain's Corner podcast. It features old school wrestling interviews and discussions, plus all the latest goings on in the world of the Captain's adventures. Nothing else quite like the Captain's Corner pod. Also on the WrestleCopia Network, the Glory Days GrappleCon cast. Hosts Barry and Captain Nick present the Glory Days GrappleCon podcast featuring memories and special interviews with wrestling stars of the past and even those of today. There's even more at WrestleCopia, a podcast called TR Shocks the World, the WCNN News, and the Power Hour. It's quite a lineup with more new podcasts joining all the time. It's the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. How do you get involved? It's pretty easy. Go to their constantly updated website, WrestleCopia.com. Click a few buttons and take a voyage into wrestling's past, present, and future. Get it all at WrestleCopia. I need this show tonight because I'll tell you what, I need to laugh a little bit. The lower 48 is going through some trials and tribulations as this show comes out. And I'll tell you what, this is just what I need. We need one of Canada's finest comedians. And I mean that with all sincerity. But he also has a wrestling past. Last year, the book Run with the Bull came out, written along with the great Greg Oliver. And I'll tell you what, one of the best wrestling books of the year. A lot of people are saying it too. I don't know when the official lists of best wrestling books come out, but I'll have it on my list. That's for sure. We got Eric Johnston back on the show. Welcome back, man. Good to see you.
It's good
Hello,
to be
Big
back.
Daddy.
Yeah, that's right. I had a son a month ago yesterday, and Jet Johnston is his name. He could be a wrestler, he could be a pilot, he could be a wide receiver. I think with a name like Jet Johnston, he's gonna do very well. So yeah, a lot has changed since I last talked to you, and the book had just been coming out when I talked to you last, and it did very well on Amazon and #1 bestseller on many categories. And then I printed, hundreds, maybe 1,000 copies and took them on the road and toured across North America and sold the book all over on my comedy tour. And people are still buying it online. People are still buying it at shows. And I'm very happy with how it turned out. And I'm very happy that it brought you and I together. You're one of my biggest supporters down south, and and I appreciate that. So here I am back again.
Well, if I'm your #1 supporter down here, you need help. No, I'm just kidding. But
I said one of.
Oh, all right, good. Phew, jeez, don't put any pressure on me, man. But I will say that I will say this. Let's let you plug right now because you got a new thing coming our way. And I mean our way. You are going to do sort of what I do. Please tell the folks all about it because I'm real doggone interested in this.
Yeah, so it was finally time for me to start my own podcast. As a comic, most top comics right now have a podcast. Now, I was very resistant to it. Not that I don't like podcasting, not that I don't love being a guest on podcasts. I love it. I mean, this is our second time here, and I'm on, countless podcasts, and I love doing it. It was really a time thing, and it was really, I am a little old school. I mean, this is the Outdating Wrestling Hour podcast, and I'm a little old school where I was like, you know what? I'm going to make it on the merit of my talent, and I had a great conversation with a veteran comedian. He said to me, Eric, you're like a taxi driver. Taxi drivers have been around a long time, and they are the backbone of the economy, or at least they were. And, you're old school. You're like a big yellow cab that's going to get you there. You're going to have a great time. You're going to tell great stories. Taxi cabs had a great run. But then Uber and Lyft showed up. If you want to continue to drive a taxi cab, listen, you can still make money. You can still do your thing. But you got to move on to this online world. You got to move on to this, basically Uber, Lyft. Get into people's phones. You got to get into have them have more access to you, easier access to you. Because really, my job as a comedian, again, as an old school kind of cat, was, you want to come see me? Come see me. Tickets are $25, $30. I'm going to be in this town, this town, this town, this town. I got books. I got merch. I got shot glasses. I got my own hot sauce coming out. If you want it, come see me, come get it. But with the advent of Uber and Lyft in the show business world, the advent of TikTok and Instagram and podcasting and stuff, really is really setting the difference between taxis and Ubers, and between great comedians and entertainers that people know about, or great comedians and entertainments that everybody knows about. And the really difference in that is a podcast. Because I have up my social media. There's more clips of me doing stand-up online. There's more, access to behind the scenes stuffs online. But the reality is I'm a storyteller, and I love telling stories, and I've got a lot of cool friends. I've been in show business for my entire life. Started as an actor, then, switched into stand-up comedy 15 years ago. I've been on the road for 15 years and met so many great comics and actors and athletes, and, friends with NHL players and stuff like that. So there's this whole world that's basically untapped for me to finally start my podcast. That's why I just announced on my Facebook that I am starting the Eric Johnston Run with the Bull podcast. Now, do I know what I'm doing? Absolutely not. Could I be able to bullshit my way through it? Of course. I've been doing that my entire life. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a mix of in-person podcasts at my studio here in Hamilton, Ontario, for kind of more local guests or guests coming through town. But if there's someone that I want to Zoom in with or StreamYard in with and, have on a webcam and do something like this, I can do that too. And then I have access to my friends who live in other cities and other countries. And I'm really excited about it. I'm still kind of learning and putting everything together now, and lining up sponsors and lining up ad reads and all that kind of stuff. Because when I hit the ground, I want to hit the ground running. So I said in the new year. I wasn't very specific. I didn't give it a date. So the new year, I can launch this thing as late as December. I'm still technically in the new year. But I said, I think by the end of this month, early next month, the official Eric Johnston Run with the Bull podcast will be up and streaming anywhere you listen to your podcast: Spotify, YouTube, Apple, all that stuff.
Sure. Nice. I will give you one bit of advice. Now, I'm not saying I'm a millionaire from doing this, but I will say this. I have never not charted, not even one show. All right.
Yeah.
I have been shockingly popular with this particular program because I'm just a schlub who wrote for a wrestling magazine 35 years ago. I mean, why me? And I think it's because here's why. And I mean this with all my heart. I did it as a musician. I don't know if you know I was a musician.
Yeah, of course.
I did it as a musician. I'm doing it now. Do your own thing and don't listen to anybody's advice with podcasting. I am serious. That's my one bit of advice to you. Follow your own muse. Don't follow a trend. Don't follow an algorithm. Don't follow something you read somewhere. Do it from the heart. Do it for your mind. Be yourself. I don't even use notes on the show. I scribble a few things on a piece of paper. That's it. And I like freeform conversation. I think it's much more interesting than, well, back in 1980, Eric, did you play the left nose? Right. So
the laugh nose. Who books that? I got to get on that gig.
It's a snotty thing. But anyway, but anyhow, no, seriously, I really mean this with all sincerity. Other podcasters say, "How come? What are you doing?" I just said, I'm doing what I want to do.
Yeah. You know what? And I've definitely lived that life in stand-up comedy. I'm very much, as I think we talked about on the show last time, I don't have an agent. I don't have a manager. I don't have a booker. Everything you see me doing, I've booked, I've promoted. I made the poster. I made the promo video. I edited everything. I've taught myself so much of that. And on stage too, that kind of follow your muse. And in comedy, we call it finding your voice. And I found my voice pretty early on in stand-up comedy because I had this crazy upbringing, which, was part of this show, with the professional wrestler father and the professional wrestler grandfather and the wrestlers coming by the house and the bushwhacker swimming in my pool when I was a kid. And I had this crazy upbringing that I just kind of said, I think I want to talk about this. I don't want to just go up there and tell jokes. I don't want to read through the newspaper and look for a little nugget that I can turn into a piece of material. I just started telling stories about my upbringing. And, minus the fact that my dad was a professional wrestler, I was shocked at how many people related to what I was talking about, even though we live completely different lives in completely different cities and completely different times. It's kind of, I found this commonality with everybody, and it was just through storytelling. So I think that's what'll work for the podcast, is just like, I want to talk about what I want to talk about. I don't want to ask comics, every time I'm on a comedy podcast, they say, well, how did you get started? And who are your big inspirations, and how do you deal with hecklers, and how do you deal with wokeness, and how it's the same questions all the time. I'm going to make an effort, unless it really comes up and it's a point of interest in how someone started or where they got started, to not ask those questions and just talk about, I bought my wife loves board games, and at Christmas, her and her family and myself, we all play board games or card games or whatever. And I bought this one called, it's a conversation starter kind of board game. There's no winner, there's no loser. It's just 150 great questions to ask someone to start a conversation. And I might thumb through a couple of those, and if I'm ever stuck, go, what's the time that this happened? And they're really great loaded questions that make you have really long conversations. So, I mean, it works really well for a podcast. But again, look at us right now. We're doing this podcast 10 minutes, and we didn't come up. You just said, hey, you want to come on the show? I said, yeah, let's do it. 7:00. I'll see you there. And that's it. That's kind of what I want to do, is exactly what you're doing. So that's why I'm happy to, talk to you today. Mm-hmm. I'm not taking your advice, obviously. You try to give me advice. I'm going to take your advice and not listen to it. That's the plan.
There you go. Absolutely. Well, and that means you're doing your own thing already. So you're not listening. You're not taking my advice, but you're taking my advice. Wow. It's really, you think about it, it's perfect. AI, baby.
Yeah.
But, here's the thing, too. I used to like, another case in point for what you were just saying, the conversation. I used to like, I don't know why they stopped doing it. Pat Oswalt and Meredith Salinger did a podcast together called, I think, Text Me Back or something like that. And it was just them talking to each other. And I really enjoyed it. And then they just stopped. And it lasted about 1 year, I think. But I still listen to it. So I still go back and check out the old episodes like that. Are you going to have anybody to bounce things off of on your show?
I don't think so. I mean, I can carry conversation pretty well myself. But, I think a lot of the guests, at least initially, in the first 50 episodes, I've already got them I had them in my head, and then I had the wherewithal to write them in my phone. These are all people I know. These are all people I've worked with. These are all people that are celebrities, or, people in their own right, people of note in their own right, whether it's, professional wrestling or stand-up comedy or acting or sports or whatever. People I know, but people I don't know everything about. So it's just going to be kind of, letting these things naturally flow. And then, the biggest thing is I was on a podcast recently, and I mean, I don't give a shit what I say and what other people say, but the podcast host goes, hey, after we're done, if you feel like you said anything that didn't represent you well, or you kind of feel like you can get in trouble, I'll happily edit it out. I'm like, what the fuck would I say that you would have to edit it out? I mean, I'm responsible. I'm a grown man. I have opinions, but I'm not too opinionated. I'm not too opinionated about politics, or, everyone asks me, well, what do you think about Justin Trudeau stepping down? I go, I don't give a shit. It doesn't matter to me. I really found a really point in my life where it's a great freeing thing. When someone asks me for my opinion on something, I will say to them, you know what? I'm just not educated enough in the subject to make a comment on it. But if you want to educate me, I'm happy to listen. And you let people talk, and you kind of bounce things off of them, and maybe they bounce off you, you bounce off them, and you kind of come to an agreement. But I just hate that, when they say at a dinner party, never talk religion, politics, and whatever. It's kind of like that. I think with my podcast, and what you and I are able to do on your shows, that we can just have a regular conversation, which I'm really excited about. So
there you go. I'm looking forward to your thing, man. I really am. This one is going to be, I can tell you right now, it's going to be my regular docket, because I need something like this. Because I consider you a fresh voice on the scene, not only in Canada, but here in the United States. And we need more of this. We need more of a little freshness, if you know what I mean, in two different ways, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's got to be fresh. Here's the thing. Like, I'm 34 years old. So in life, I'm young.
So young. God.
But I'm a, father, new father, just bought a house, just got married, 18 months ago. and also have spent the last 15 years on the road. So I have all this experience, plus the experience of my father, the professional wrestler, my grandfather, the professional wrestler, their stories, which I was, as you know, able to put into a book. I just have so much experience, more than I think anyone my age. I mean, the places I've been, my wife and I watch the Amazing Race Canada, which is in Canadian television. What we do is just take an existing American property and we make it Canada. So it's Amazing Race Canada. It's Big Brother Canada. It's Deal or No Deal Canada. Canada's Got Talent. Family Feud Canada, which we were on an episode of. And, there's all these, you make it your Canadian thing. But my wife and I watched Amazing Race Canada, and I had been to all the places they had been to. Like, I was giving the people on TV directions. They got to go to this park at this time, at this, what I go, I know exactly where they're going. You got to get on that highway. And I was just, because I've been there. I've done so much already that I think that experience will come through, in the podcast. It came through in the book, and it comes through just in regular conversation, which again, I'm very excited to start. I just got to get started. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. And that is the key. Just get started. That's right. That is the most daunting. You know what? That's the most daunting thing about me and getting started. Yeah, I got started because I had, with this expression, I had a wild hair up my ass because somebody had done me wrong, baby. So I decided to start a podcast of my own. And I'll tell you what, I had the thing out in 4 days, literally on the podcast networks in 4 days. And I was so proud of that, just to get it out there.
Yeah.
But I will admit one thing to you. This is like the 103rd, 104th episode of this show.
Wow.
First one sucked. I mean,
they usually do.
Hello, everybody. If you're a young wrestling fan, you might want to. I didn't think it was particularly good. I called Baron Mikhail Cicluna my favorite wrestler of all time. If you know who that is, I hope you don't. But anyway,
I was gonna say I'm a pretty big mark, and I don't even know who that is. So there
you got to go way back. But that was the whole idea of the show, is that we were going to go way back, and we still do. But anyhow, no, it's like anything else. I'm sure if you have a VHS tape of yourself in your first comedy gig, you're probably cringing, right? Am I right?
Oh, it's awful. It was awful. It was, but you know what? I had that confidence. I was at a brunch meeting yesterday, and I said, in high school, my written exams were always 60, 65, sometimes 70 on a good day. But my oral exams, my presentations, I would get 90, 95, 100. So I would average my mark out to be somewhere in the 70s to low 80s, because I just had that ability to kind of bullshit and fake it till I make it. I'm a Hamilton guy, and I said to you last summer on the show, Hamilton is kind of like the New Jersey of Canada. It's fast-moving, hardworking. Everyone's got a story. Everyone's got a character. And, I look back at my early stand-up, and it wasn't very good, but at least I could sell it. I could always sell it. And so it was almost like the audience was going, this isn't very funny, but fuck, does he believe in what he's talking about? And I'm gonna come around with, I'm gonna come along with him on this journey, and they did, and that he was able to get more gigs and more gigs and more gigs, and never stopped. 15 years later, and like we talked about on the show last time, I've done so much in the top comedy clubs in America and Canada, and opened for some of my comedic heroes, and now I'm my own headliner on my 5th national headlining tour, which is going to start in a couple weeks, and you fake it till you make it, then you make it, and then it doesn't feel fake. It kind of feels like, wow, I really did this thing. So I'm gonna have to do that with podcasting and my wrestling knowledge. And I know we're on the wrestling show, so we can steer that way if you like.
But I have one more question for you. You're at the point in your career at this point, and I'm sure this is true, that this is your job. Comedy is your job.
Yeah.
Not everybody can say that. A lot of people who have tried comedy cannot say that. So I congratulate you for that, because
thank you very much.
That means you're making it in a real way.
Yeah, you know what? It took a lot of years, and today, between feeding the baby, burping the baby, changing the baby, and trading off with my wife every 20 minutes, half hour, I put a full 8-hour shift in today, booking shows, making posters. I had 2 conference calls. This podcast I consider part of my work. This is, more friends, and I like coming on here, but this is a work thing. Hey, New York, it goes out, people listen. This is, people are going to listen and hopefully follow. Everything just feeds the machine. but I love it. The classic, very cliche saying of love what you do and you'll never work a day in your life is so true with me. I don't feel like I'm working at all. I could be writing up a 3-page proposal to a liquor company to sponsor a show. When I was in high school, they asked me to write 3 pages about anything, it would take me 2 weeks. Or now it's like I get motivated to do something. I'm like, all right, boom, 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 and it's like that little bit of accomplishment, that little check mark. I have a to-do list that's every Sunday night. I make a to-do list for the week, and it's got 50 things on it that I check off most of them by Monday afternoon because I'm in that flow state and I'm just banging them out, and and then spend some time with the baby. So life is and to circle it all back to the podcast, now that I'm home with the baby and by design, the first 3 months of my tour are all in Ontario, and most of them are all drive home after the show gigs. A couple of them, like they're 3, 4, 5 hours away. I got to spend the night in a hotel, but then get up and then drive home the next day. So that's given me more time to do the podcast and really throw myself at the podcast. Because for the last, 10 of the last 15 years, I've just been living on the road, getting in the car and driving across the country and down into New Jersey and New York and Chicago and upstate Michigan and Los Angeles. And so it's time to kind of, the baby has slowed me down at the perfect time. And it's time to, do exactly that, slow down and focus on that. And now that all the wrestling's on Netflix, I got a lot more things to watch on TV while I'm working.
Like you said, we'll get back to the wrestling. Are you aware of today's stuff? Do you still watch?
Yeah, so I took a big break. I like most guys and girls, but most guys my age, I'm a product of the Attitude Era, and the Attitude Era for me, that's wrestling. I watched the 1990 Royal Rumble, I think 90 or 89 the other day on Netflix, and it was great. But I'm a Attitude Era guy. Ruthless Aggression was when I became really aware of wrestling, and the fact that even my father was doing this as well. Attitude around 2003, and it probably coincides perfectly around the time my father passed away. I was kind of done with wrestling, and I took a big break. I would check in around Mania. I would see what the current storylines are, who's working, who's doing what are the storylines. I'd say over the last 2-3 years, I've kind of dived back into wrestling, and I like the current product, and I like AEW. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on with AEW, and I hear a lot of it firsthand from my good friend RJ City. But I think wrestling is in some of the most exciting times in its history right now with the Netflix deal and the. You would think all the Vince McMahon stuff would kind of bury it. I think they've rised out of that, all that stuff with like a phoenix out of the ashes of that, all that scandal. And it's wrestling's huge now. And it's exciting to watch. I watched the first Raw on Netflix. It felt like a Mania. Like it was like a Monday Night Mania. The opening match could have been a Mania headlining match.
I think it felt bigger than a Mania.
Yeah.
The audio-visual presentation at the beginning and the entire ring shrouded in that roundish, curtainy thing they were showing videos on, and the lighting in the arena and the overall feel and the way the wrestlers were brought to the ring, it never felt this big before. No, I'm serious. I'm not even making this up. It just felt bigger than ever.
I agree. And you know what? A lot of people, I saw a lot of kind of backlash and people talking in that intro, they were talking about heels and faces and what's a work and what's a shoot. And it was kind of a very big peek behind the curtain of professional wrestling, which we're all aware of. Whether you're a casual wrestling fan or a Stone Cold Mark, you're aware of what's going on, but you're still accepting that. But I feel like even in that intro video, they're trying to tap into this hyper realism space that now with the TKO UFC agreement, they're doing more of the weigh-ins and the press conferences and the introductions with the ring announcer, and they're standing in a spotlight head to head and stuff. I feel like there's a lot of that going on, but I think it's cool. I think what they're doing is really cool, and I think I've never been more interested in wrestling. And even NXT, like I even watched NXT last week. I haven't watched NXT since I think it started, but it's really cool to see, The Rock out there and cutting, half-written promos on everybody and just swearing a bunch, which was hilarious. But it was, all ego. Ethan Page is a friend of mine. He's from Hamilton. We used to work out together. I used to go to his indie shows here in Hamilton. And And it's so great to see his kind of growth in the company. And I think he's going to get a real push as someone who is a fan, but also has that peek behind the curtain. And the peek behind the curtain is being more regularly talked about in professional wrestling. I think it's all very exciting. I've never been a more excited wrestling fan. You know, my wife and I are on sleep shifts with the baby. So basically she goes to bed and sleeps from 9 to 3 and I stay up with the baby and then I go to bed and sleep from 3 to 9. I'm up watching, you know, Raw, SmackDown, NXT, old WrestleManias, old Royal Rumbles, old, you know, Backlash and King of the Ring. And I think as a business, I think they're doing exceptionally well. And I think the storylines are kind of coming back. I feel like this year things dipped a little bit. I think as they're leading up to the Netflix deal, I think they were not trying to burn a lot of their best writing and their best, you know, spots.
Yeah. Post WrestleMania, take a couple of months, and the 2 months before this debut, I thought they were kind of coasting, but I think they had to.
Sure. And I agree with that. I did in those points kind of tune out. But then as the hype of the Netflix, you know, came to life, I was right back in. And, you know, sometimes I have to catch up and I have to read, you know, I guess the dirt sheets or whatever they are and see what's really going on before I can even tune in, because I don't, you know, go on Twitter and see who's feuding, because there are times where I'll tune out for a month and a half, 2 months, and I'll go, wait, I thought they were working together. When did that heel turn come? Like, even when on Raw last week when New Day came out as heels, I go, when the fuck did this happen? Like, I wasn't even paying attention to that. So it was cool.
I got to tell you, when they kind of kicked Big E to the curb is what happened in the ring.
Yeah.
It was good. It was real good. It was riveting. And the fans went ballistic and haven't let up on the other two since. You know, Kofi and they're on them like a white on rice, because it's like they hate these guys now. It worked like gangbusters. And to generate that kind of heat these days for being a heel is very hard to do.
And you know what? I thought it was interesting because they're really not doing anything profound heel stuff. I mean, they had the turn on Big E, but even just their promos, the whole promo is just them interrupting, them wanting to get their words in, them wanting to put down the audience and how they're higher up than everyone. It's classic Flair. We're rich, we're better. You can see in their outfits. You can see in the whatever. This is our heel rich guy character now. They're not doing anything groundbreaking, and it's working because it's such a turn. You know, New Day, we used to come out with the cereal boxes and all that, all those with the trumpets and everything. They were such over as faces that when they went heel, all these people were like, "Oh my god, this is now completely different." They're not doing anything profound, but it's working, and I think that's really cool.
You're a comedian. You remember when Xavier Woods used to come out with that trombone, right? And it's like, do you remember the spots they used to do when let's say Kofi's in the ring with somebody? This is back when they were faces, but you know, he'd play. But there was times when Kofi would kick somebody out of the ring, and he'd take the trombone and go, and I would laugh every time. Like Spike Jones lived. You know?
It's classic comedy. I mean, I don't know what interview I was listening to, but you know, they talk about old movies. Someone was talking about like movies from the 1920s, and if you were to watch a romance dramatic movie, it would look very cheesy. It would look very, oh, my love, and they dip her in the sunset with the piano playing and the, you know, Casablanca kind of love story. But if you go watch an old comedy, Three Stooges, Marx Brothers stuff, even for me, my old thing is Super Dave. Super Dave is still as funny as it was when it came out in the 70s and 80s. And comedy will live, good comedy, I should preface, good comedy and well written and classic, whether it's slapstick or silly over the top stuff like that, will always be funny, and it will survive through time and space and media, and you know, whether it's through stand up, whether it's through comedy movies, whether it's through comedic spots and wrestling matches and promos. I just think it just lives perfectly and seamlessly. What did you think of Hulk Hogan's reaction on Raw?
You know, I really enjoyed it. But I enjoyed it. I don't have anything against Hogan personally, but just to see that happen unexpectedly, let's put it this way. I was laughing, but I don't take it too seriously. Like, I'm not good. They got him. Hammer him. I didn't feel that way. I was just kind of surprised and delighted because you know what? I think the fans should boo more stuff.
Yeah.
They should boo the stuff that was bad back in the day. Wrestling fans have wrestling fans like to chant. They want to be part of the show. What they
Yeah.
haven't learned, though, these young punks, is why not boo when something is really bad? They don't do that now.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about the other company, but that's just a whole another ball of wax.
Yeah.
But
No, I think there's a lot that should be booed. I watched some highlights of AEW that I'm booing my phone when I'm watching it. But yeah, I just think with Hogan, I mean, bringing him out in Los Angeles was already not a great place for him to come out. I don't get political. I know that Los Angeles as a whole was very voting for Kamala Harris and Hogan's support for Trump and whatever. I just feel like when I watched it, it was the first time that I've seen Hogan look old. And I mean, not only in his body, the way he walked out very slowly, you could tell whether his leg or his back or his hips were bothering, something was bothering him in his body. But it was the first time that I've seen Hogan be kind of flustered. Like he was still just trying to get through his promo for the Real American Beer or what he was promoting. I think part of the reasons why they're booing is because people, as much as wrestling fans are people who buy merchandise, I feel like people had enough of him selling something to them. He's just a guy who's selling something. No, he's going out and promoting his beer, and they're like, boo! Even though the beer has a paid partnership with WWE now, and it makes sense for the brand to be there, people just feel like he's just like an infomercial, an old infomercial salesman who's coming out to gouge some more money off them for his Real American Beer.
Hulk Hogan's Pasta Mania, Hulk Hogan's Grill, Hulk Hogan this, Hulk Hogan, Yes, I agree with you. I think people are sick of the Home Shopping Network, to be honest with you.
The king of merchandising. I think the only people who has more merch than Hulk Hogan is Kiss. And but
that doesn't upset anybody though. That's
I think it was a bad place and time for him to be there. I think there was a lot of other people who could have been there. I think they could have saved him until they were somewhere else in the country he would have been more welcomed, be it Florida or somewhere in the South, or maybe even New York. It just didn't feel right. It felt very forced, and I felt bad for him. But I also kind of loved it. I kind of, Macaulay Culkin got a bigger pop than Hulk Hogan that night, which was perfect for me.
Hey, a question popped into my mind as we're talking. Since you're a wrestling person who's watched it on and off, when Vince McMahon was running the WWE, he was always on Raw or SmackDown, one forced comedy vignette per show. Is there anything unfunnier than when wrestling tries to be funny?
Yeah. I always find that professional wrestling is always like 5 years behind what's cool. And like I mean that
that is so spot on. That's perfect. Yeah.
Like my example of this is Yeet and Uso and the Yeet. I remember 5 years ago, people saying on the internet and people at the bar or whatever, the trends online were Yeet. That person got yeeted or whatever. Now, 5 years later, he's the Yeet guy trying to keep it alive. And I go, this isn't cool anymore. You can bring rappers out with him and you can bring whatever, but just that whole, like, with the grills and the gold teeth and the Yeet and I just find it's just a little lame. I mean,
but it's going over though.
That's what I mean. That's why I'm always so blown away.
When he comes down to the crowd, which is how he does his entrances now, they're all doing that arm thing.
Yeah.
And you see, and they pan back and you see an arena with 17,000 people all doing it in unison. I'm like, boy, is he over.
Well, I was at SummerSlam in Toronto, and it was SummerSlam in Toronto, and everyone was doing it. I was doing it. I was marking out and doing it. I hadn't been to a live wrestling event in many years, a professional wrestling event. I've been to, that's funny. I've been to a lot of AEW because I get a lot of free tickets for AEW, but like a big, large scale pay-per-view event like that, I hadn't been to, I think, ever really. So I was cheering the heels and the faces. Every song that came on, I was singing along, and I'm doing crowd work with all the people around me. And I called Damian Priest. I called him Bisexual Undertaker, and everyone started laughing around me.
Oh, jeez.
And, I really bought in hook, line, and sinker. to the event. And it's so, wrestling, live wrestling, especially a large scale pay-per-view event like that, it's so contagious and so you're just in it. It's like an enigma of energy. It's a ball of energy that you just can't deny. And I was sitting it the whole way. I was drinking, $30 beers and singing. And I back to that thing about booing and cheering. I find most wrestlers are getting over most with a theme song. Like, I think Seth Rollins is if he didn't have that theme song that, that everyone sings along to, I think he's a great wrestler. But I think when he comes out in the big, crazy, over the top costumes, I think it's a little tacky. I think his kind of cool guy, I don't even know what he is. I don't really know what his gimmick is, really.
You've heard the Cody Rhodes theme.
Yeah.
And everybody really sings along with that. I can't make out a word of it.
No, me either. I just wait for the fireworks to go off.
Time for the show. I can't understand it. I don't, but everybody else does, and they're singing along like it's
Yeah, the theme song.
Kumbaya around the campfire.
Cody, Seth, and the couple, and Sami Zayn. I think they're great wrestlers, great talents. I'm not really sure what any of their gimmicks are, but I'll tell you, their theme songs go over like crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
Sammy's a little ska, right? I mean, that's pretty original.
Yeah. Well, he's a Montreal punk guy. I mean, him and Kevin Owens come out of the Montreal wrestling scene. Obviously, Montreal is a very ska punk place. Everyone in Montreal, everyone's very high fashion, and the people who are of the rock high fashion, ilk in Montreal, they all look like 1980s kind of punk ska with the big hair and the flannel and the zippers and stuff. It looks like a hair metal in Montreal now. And I think he taps into that market, but then he brought it to America where he just seems so original. As a Canadian, I watch it, I go, oh, this guy's such a Montreal punk. But in America, they go, this guy's just a cool guy who comes out to ska,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really weird.
And I always thought that John Cena's theme sounded like it should have been for Eddie Guerrero.
Yes. You know what? It was so funny. At SummerSlam, that was the night that Cena came out to announce his retirement. And he wasn't planned or scheduled to be on the show. I think it was a women's match or something going on. I like women's wrestling, but I really had to pee. I drink and I pee. That's my thing. I have to pee every 20 minutes.
Wait do you get to my age? You know what? You know what the difference is? When you got to pee, you got to pee. That's the difference. Yeah,
I'm already there. I think. We'll see. I might have to get my prostate checked. But I had got up to go to the washroom, to the bathroom, and I'm in ACC, the Scotiabank Arena, and it's sold out. There's, I don't even know, 27,000 people, and it's mostly men. So the lineup for the women's restroom was empty. The lineup for the men's restroom it had to be 120 people long the entire event. And I got in line to the washroom, to the restroom, and I was like, I may pee my pants. This is like borderline. It's either going to be somewhere illegal or it's going to be in my pants. And then Cena's theme song hit, and thousands of grown men took off running to get back into the arena to go see John Cena. His music's still playing, and my first thought was, thank God I can finally pee. There was no line. I went right in. I peed. He wasn't even in the ring yet. And I still caught his entire promo, and it was perfect.
That's amazing. That's great. Oh, man. I have no doubt that's 1,000% true. I mean, anybody who's ever been to a sports event where it's sold out, it's, oh my gosh, goal! Boom, out they go.
See ya.
I missed it.
Quite the experience for sure.
Yeah. So it looks like things are firing on all cylinders for you, Eric, and that's great. I'm sure the book didn't hurt. It's been a good 18 months or so for you, and I'm proud to have gotten to know you, and I also am happy for your success. And I want you to know, as a comedian, in all seriousness, as Eugene Levy would say, the photos you had on Facebook of your new family were very sweet and very real, and I really found them to be really heartwarming, and I'm glad you shared them with all of us because I know it was a huge moment in your life, and I want to congratulate you and your wife for a beautiful baby and a beautiful family.
I appreciate that, and we'll get him watching wrestling, and he'll know very well about his grandfather and his great-grandfather and his father as well. I'm very excited. This is something that I've wanted a long time, and, I had to find the right girl and get married and get a home and all that kind of stuff before that could line up for me, but it all lined up perfectly, and, my career's never been better. My life's never been better. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to talk wrestling with you. I'm thrilled to talk, make a friend and, far away from me, and it's as my mom would say, it's all coming together. It's all, whenever my mom's planning an event, whether it's Easter or Christmas or whatever, I go, Mom, how's it going with dinner? She goes, it's all coming together. And that's kind of how I feel right now. And I'm excited to get to the next level. So,
and you certainly will. Now, since I got you here, tell the fine folks out there where they can come and see you, where your website is. Just give them the whole tour, will you?
Yeah, so everything's very simple. Eric Johnston Who. So Eric with a C, Johnston with a T, WHO. That's ericjohnstonwho.com for my website. My Instagram is at Eric Johnston Who. Facebook, Eric Johnston Who. All of my tour dates are listed on my website. Mostly, if you're a Canadian listener, I'm starting in Ontario. I have a big show towards the end of the tour in the Cayman Islands, doing my first show in the Caribbean on this tour. And come see me. You'll hear lots of comedy, lots of stories, a little bit about wrestling, a little bit, and by the end, you'll know everything that there is to know about me, including my new son, Jet Johnston.
Awesome. That's just great. Well, congratulations again. I'm telling you, always make me laugh when you come on, and you have open invitation to just peek your head in here anytime you can, because it's like, I need this stuff, man. I mean, my life is very strange, and I'm not saying it's bad. I'm too busy, which is a good thing.
Good for you.
But I'm always tired. I'm not 36 anymore. You can reverse those numbers. and it's like, I am telling you, it's starting to feel different now. I've still got a lot of energy and I can accomplish a lot. But now it's like, I think I'll sit down before I watch. There goes the whole night of TV. When you wake up, it's 3 a.m. and there's, some Teflon pan on at 3 a.m. on some home shopping network, right?
Yeah. It's Hulk Hogan selling a Teflon
probably,
pan.
Probably, yeah. Even worse, Jimmy Hart is selling the lid. Okay. but no, things start to feel a little different when you get my age. So I am definitely outdated, but you know what? Laughter keeps you young. And, you and I are going to have to, you're going to have to come back to New York. I want to see you in the flesh, and I promise to be there.
Perfect. I can't wait.
So there's an audience of 2 people who will get some more to fill it up. So.
I need at least 6 for a show.
Yeah. The book is called Run with the Bull. It's still out there. You're going to want to read it if you're into wrestling and humor, and a really, really nice story about, I guess, a family.
Yeah.
Check out that book. It's really great. This is Eric Johnston. He's a really funny guy. Check social media for his work. He's hilarious. And this is one I'm 1,000% positive you're going to like, Eric Johnston. Eric, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks, Bob.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our talk with Eric Johnston. And I hope you enjoyed my little chance to rant about some sophomoric stuff. But in any event, thank you for being here once again. Our website is outdatedwrestlinghour.buzzsprout.com. Hear all of our shows right there at the click of a button. Learn where they're all broadcast. That's outdatedwrestlinghour.buzzsprout.com. The Outdated Wrestling Hour is part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and a production of Bob Smith Podcast, as is our sister show, The Outdated Entertainment Hour. We got a good one now with Tony Coleman. You got to check it out. If you don't know that name, he was the longtime drummer for B.B. King, a great entertainer in his own right, and, in my opinion, the greatest, forget the word blues, he's one of the greatest drummers ever. He's got a lot to say about his history of B.B. King and a lot more. So check out the latest edition of the Outdated Entertainment Hour. It's worth your time. I'm really proud of this one. Write to us, outdatedwrestling@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook. I'm the only Bob Smith singing with B.B. King. Again, we don't call my Facebook area the name of the show. It's just Bob Smith. But when you see B.B. King, you know it's me. We're also on Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky. That's it for right now. Hope you had a lot of fun. It's always fun putting these things together. Thank you for your loyalty and your listens. If you listen to us on a podcast app, please hit that subscribe button. It really does help, as they say on YouTube. We're also available on YouTube, too, by the way. I should always say that. For those of you who would rather just have your TV on, and there you go. I don't know why I say that. I watch YouTube on television. I don't watch it on my phone or a tablet or anything like that. I love my Roku box because everything you do on the smaller devices, you could do at home. As you're laying there like a slug, like I do most days. Well, anyway, oops. Anyway, that's it. My name is Bob Smith, and as I always say at the end of these things, in the words of Ringo Starr, peace and love, brothers and sisters. And I mean peace and love.